Alright, it's time for part 2 of my Best of Next Fest 2024 February edition of the event. We have another day and another slew of interesting and great indie game demos to check out. We are starting things off with Biomorph. This is a Metroidvania where we play as a creature with 2 living organisms' 4 arms. When they awaken aboard a mysterious spaceship with no memory, they're going to have to figure out what is going on by, well, punching a lot of things along the way. Our kind of unique element in this game is that the mid to large size enemies, once we kill them, we can take over their form, granting us their abilities and any kind of special powers they may have. If you take over enough of the same form, you are allowed to then transform into that character essentially wherever you want. This can be used to make certain sections easier, get around, solve puzzles, and so on. With the caveat that the versions of the monster that you kind of absorb, when you return to that area, they will become stronger. There are different upgrades you can find, secrets, MacGuffins, and all that good stuff, and the platforming and combat felt pretty solid. This one definitely has some potential if you're looking for a Metroidvania to sate yourself while you're waiting for Silksong, and I really didn't see anything too nitpicky or issues with Biomorph. So this is definitely a solid entry for our list, and a must play if you're looking for a Metroidvania, which I guess could be described as, Kirby but more violent. And now we turn to Diceomancer. This is a deck-building roguelike, where we just want to go out and get some nice fishing done. But unfortunately, all manner of baddies are out to get us. But we do have one very subtle ability to aid us, and that is a complete ability to rewrite reality using the power of dice. And unfortunately, we cause the end of all time and space along the way. Our mission is to appease a god who has given us this power, and we must stay one step ahead of the giant ominous death cloud that is trying to get past us, while dealing with very adorable looking animals and critters standing in our way. The deck building in this one works like this. Cards come in different colors which relate to their overall element or attribute. This determines deck styles. Each kind of card can require a specific color of mana. Could be purple, blue, red, green, whatever. And in order to power that up, you must either consume or sacrifice a card during your turn, or have a kind of card that grants you that mana to begin with. The dice-related mechanics come in by the fact that many cards in this game, both yours and the enemy's abilities, are going to be based on the dice roll or RNG. So an enemy may gain a special attack if they roll a certain number. Where things get very crazy is when you're introduced to the ability to hack literally any number on this screen using a dice. It could be a D4, D6, D20, whatever. This could allow you to, give yourself more health, give yourself more money, take an enemy's attack and reduce it to 1, give your attack, raise it to a obscene number. And you'll need to figure out when to use your hacking powers in order to get through. Now, because of the whole dice mechanics, as well as with the RNG, there is a lot of RNG in this one in terms of how you're going to succeed or fail. If I had any nitpicks in terms of the aesthetics, I would have loved, a little bit more animations to the enemies, especially when you finish them off, as they just fade away. But this one is looking to be a very interesting, very complicated, and very challenging take on dice building combat. So if you're a fan of deck builders looking for one that you really get to mess with things on the board, then I definitely recommend you check this one out. We now turn to the Metroidvania, Alruna and the NecroIndustrialists. That was certainly a title. In this one, we play as a Dyad or Dryad? I always get those two terms confused. The world has fallen to ruin due to those damn NecroIndustrialists. And in order to bring nature back to the world, we must do a lot of platforming and find upgrades. In this one, kind of our main marketing point is that the game is designed to be as sequence-breaking, speedrun friendly as one could be. They fully expect you to break this game in two, trying to find ways to get around certain sequences, get through areas with the wrong abilities, and just, again, mess with the world and the order how you see fit. When you start the game, you have several abilities available. You have a slide, a dash, as well as this kind of Super Mario Bros. 2 super jump charge that you can do. From what we played of this one, it is looking to be a very meaty and very challenging game. Now, one issue that I did have with it is that the slide mechanic feels a little janky in spots. You see, in order to slide, you need to crouch and hit the dash button at the same time, but if you're close to like a wall or an object, you can't do it. As another point, you cannot crouch and attack, which can make fighting certain enemies feel a little bit weird. And as one final nitpick, you've probably noticed this by now, but our protagonist here, her hitbox or her model is taller than what we normally see for the genre, which makes kind of figuring out the space you need to jump to avoid certain objects a lot harder than it needs to be. But this is looking to be a very interesting and very advanced Metroidvania when it's released. So if you're looking for a new Metroidvania that's going to test you not only with how well you can platform, but how well you can break the game, then definitely check it out. We now go to a different kind of platforming with Eden Genesis. In a cyberpunk future, we are suffering from a deadly disease. And in order to cure ourselves of it, we are going to have to quite literally use the power of platforming and speed tech in order to cure our mind. In this one, this is a very kind of simulated physics, rapid precision-based platforming. As you're watching this footage, you can probably tell that this game is heavily inspired by the physics and platforming tech of Dustforce. You have the ability to do a triple jump, as well as sequence that into a dash as you attack enemies, and you're trying to get through levels with as perfect of a line as possible. Now, with that said, my main issue with this one is that I'm just not a fan of the Dustforce kind of platforming and physics tech. For one thing, in order to kind of launch yourself off of kind of like dash areas, you need to slam into it and then quickly hit the dash in order to give yourself more momentum. It felt very janky to me on top of all the other movement and tech you need to do. This one is definitely not going to be for novices of the genre. And if you did not like Dustforce, I don't think this game is going to do anything to change your mind. But if you do like the very challenging, very technical platforming that Dustforce did, then this should be one that you can put on your radar, because it's looking to be our futuristic take on the challenging movement tech. And if that works for you, then this looks to be a game that's going to give you plenty of hours of challenging platforming and trying to get those illustrious S+ ranks on every map. And now we have Emberward. This is yet another in the tower defense roguelike genre that we've been seeing as of late. But the game does some very interesting twists that has definitely got my interest in it. In this one, we must use the power of Tetraminos in order to set up mazes and lanes. Not only that, but wherever we place down, we can also use as our tower placements in the world. Certain towers will require different arrangements set up in order to properly make use of them. Each round, you must use your accumulated coin in order to buy turrets, set them up where they see fit, and try and deal with the waves and waves of enemies coming to get you. finish an entire level, and you'll earn experience that can be used to unlock new talents, as well as being able to get new tower cards, upgrade cards, and all that good stuff. The challenge of this one is that you really need to use your Tetris pieces here in order to properly set up lanes and keep these enemies where you want them to be, all the while kind of thinking a step ahead as to where you're going to be placing your towers. Artifacts that you can pick up during the run can change your properties of your towers, elemental effects, and all that good stuff. And I was enjoying this one. It's looking like it can be on the challenging side once you start getting some of the larger maps, but there is certainly a lot here for fans of tower defense players, looking for, again, that kind of roguelike edge to it. So if you like the idea of really being able to create your own mazes and paths as a tower defense, then definitely check this one out. We're going to the other end of the aesthetics here with Morbid and the Lords of Ire. This is the sequel to Morbid and the 7 Acolytes, which was a kind of isometric, super challenging Souls-like. We're now moving to full 3D for one that kind of feels like aspects of like Bloodborne with a pinch of a Sekiro thrown in. Well, it turns out there's more evil body horror monsters that are trying to destroy the world, and it's up to us with sword, axe, and any other implements we can find to save the day and kill those evil Lords of Ire. The name of the game in this one is kind of posture or stamina breaking. That is the bar underneath the health. As you hit enemies with attacks, you'll lower their stamina. When the stamina completely empties out, they are set up for kind of a finishing blow. You have a block as well as a parry that you can use to punish enemy attacks, 2 kinds of defensive moves, and you'll need to kind of be very aggressive in this one, because if you do too many hits to an enemy or you don't break their posture in time, they'll become enraged, which kind of changes their attack pattern until you hit them with a heavy strike. Like the first game, you do get access to runes and passive benefits you can equip to your character, with the caveat that you only can fit so many of these passive cards and the passive runes onto a weapon at a time. Now, the game could do a better job of explaining what the different attributes are, and this one is looking like a title that it's going to be very much about posture breaking, because from when we played of it, enemies become very tanky unless you use some of the super heavy attacks, and you can take a lot of damage very quickly in it. The boss that we played at the end of the demo is also very parry based, and it does lead me to wonder, I guess, how hard this game is going to be, and more specifically, how hard is it going to be if you do not understand the parry timing. Because I found the perfect block in this one to be a little janky to use. I was much better at doing the parry commands. Like the first game, there is certainly something here for fans looking for a very brutal looking take on the Souls-like, and I am interested to see where it all leads in the finished version, especially with the bosses. So if you're a fan of Souls-like design and looking for a very bloody and aggressive take on it, then you should at least give this demo a try. We now switch from evil broken world to trying to fix it with Mycelium Guardians. This is, I think, a kind of logistics or I guess like environment building style game. The reason why I say like that is that there was no onboarding whatsoever in the demo that I played on my own. Your job, from what I assume, is to use the power of mushrooms to fix the environment in a broken world. And that's about it. Unfortunately, because there wasn't any kind of onboarding, which the developer admits they took out for the demo, it made it really hard to understand just what my goal is in this one. I will say that there is something certainly intriguing about it, but without having any kind of onboarding or any kind of guidance, it's kind of hard to tell, am I winning? Am I losing? Am I just putting mushrooms down willy-nilly and hoping something will work? This one does have potential if you're looking for a very environmentally conscious kind of building game, and if you really enjoy mushrooms. And if you can figure things out, there could be something here for you. We now have Orrstead. This is a idle/city building game. It is your mission to build a settlement on an island with paths, unit constructors or resource gatherers, resource suppliers, and trying to keep your people happy, fed, and warm during the winter time. In this one, you'll gain a variety of quests and tasks to achieve, with usually the big ones being to get to certain population counts. As you get further in, you'll unlock more buildings that will add more resources for you to manage, more areas to build, and of course more conditions to keep your villagers happy. All the while, you must be managing your wisdom, which is instead of money, and that's at the top of the screen. Now, what makes this one a little bit more challenging and cumbersome than I think some of the other ones we've played is that the cost per building goes up the further you play. So the more houses you build, the more expensive it's going to get for future homes, which will make it a lot harder to get to those population goals in order to unlock the next set of quests and content. And this is again one of those games where you'll need to be planning at least 2 to 3 steps in advance, as many of your resource gatherers, resource producers, need to be within a certain radius of other buildings. And this is going to be one of those city builds where you can kind of daisy chain the resource producer to the resource gatherer to the resource supplier, so that everything isn't as bunched up, so you can make more rooms for your neighborhoods and more population. There is certainly something here for fans looking for a city builder. It is certainly charming enough. I am curious to see again, like, where it will all lead in the finished version. And for the last game of today's episode, we turn to Oddsparks. This is a charming take on kind of open world adventure meets logistics style game. One day we discover a mysterious object that lets us learn about what is going on in the world around us. There may be a potential catastrophe coming that will doom all life as we know it. But in the meantime, we're going to have to build logistics chains, production lines, and use these cute little creatures called sparks in order to run it all. So they're kind of like the Pikmin, I guess, but more crafty and build-based. And you can set them to work in different machines, which will then produce resources. You can set up pathing so they'll gather or transport resources from point A to point B, and you'll need to use their logistics powers in order to complete quests, unlock new structures and goals, and explore this world as you see fit. Now, this game is trying to, I guess, be more on the approachable side. If you're hoping for, like, full-on electrical engineering, temperature controls of, say, a Factorio, this is definitely not going to be the game for you. This one's going to be more on the charming side. There will be multiplayer that you can use to kind of set up servers so that people can work together, and it definitely has charm to spare. Now, with that said, my main issue that I had, because of the more simplistic nature of how the logic works, it makes certain things feel more janky than they need to be. Such as setting up kind of the logic that you want your creatures to do things in certain orders. You see, when you set up a path, they only move along the right-hand side of it. So if a building or kind of gathering spot is not set up properly, they're going to take the long way around and not hit it, and it does feel a little hard to kind of make minute adjustments, as the game seems to be designed, as you can see, I'm playing this with keyboard and mouse, but it does feel like it was also built to be played with gamepad. So it kind of lacks some of the quality of life features that we kind of come to know from other logistics games. But there is certainly a lot of charm to this one. And if you're a fan of logistics style games and looking for one that is more goal oriented, and one that's not going to be as like super challenging or super min-maxy if you're trying to beat it, then this is a solid pick for you. And with that said, that is day number 2 done. We still have plenty more to get to from the next fest. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see everyone for night number 3. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to do the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my books wherever they are sold. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.